Danny, thank you very much for the production and the show that you put on here on KCAA 1050 AM. We'll continue with my guest, Jimmy Gutierrez, who is here to talk about water, which we've been talking for the last almost 30 minutes to 40-some minutes, but we'll continue to do that. Jimmy, could you tell us a little bit? We were just about to get into the settlement of the problems that we have. Who will do what will they pay, and how will they do it, and when will it happen, and will Rialto be involved, or will some of the other cities be involved, Colton or San Bernardino County?
Okay. Good questions. Let me digress just a little bit to say when I got to Rialto as their city attorney, there was a pause because the first lawsuit had been dismissed for a certain period of time so the parties could negotiate. That was a very frustrating process because the parties were not interested. They stonewalled. Goodrich was the worst. I mean, they just made it impossible. But they all had reasons not to settle. They all denied liability. And when we would have settlement discussions with them, there was no progress. They weren't sincere. They didn't want to do anything. So we actually restarted the litigation. But what was interesting at this time, the area had already been declared a Superfund site. The EPA had already studied the area, and the EPA's lawyers and the Department of Justice lawyers basically got into the game, and they led the charge because now there's federal dollars involved.
Right, but we also got to give thanks to those congressional members, both on the congressional side and the Senate side, that were heavily involved in making sure that this area was designated, along with the EPA that said, yes, this is designated as a Superfund area. And since then, it's going to be very positive in terms of the cleanup for the area as well.
And so even though once we restarted the litigation, we encountered the same frustration, and what we had to do is just take a much more aggressive position with these PRPs. We pushed them in discovery, we pushed them in litigation. The city spent a lot of money in a very short period of time on legal fees and expert fees, but so did EPA. And then things started to happen as we got closer to trial, because the federal judge says, I'm not going to continue this case. You guys settle it, or you're going to trial. So that put a lot of pressure on it. And what EPA did was they said, look, we want to take charge of the settlements. Rialto, you kind of get out of the way, and you can't be the lead anymore. You've been the lead. You've been a good job. Thank you. But we want to take over. So they took over. And the first thing they did was they divided the cleanup into two parts, what's called the interim remedy and what's called the final remedy. And they entered into an agreement with a company called Emhart Industries, who's really the takeover of Black & Decker. It used to be Black & Decker, now they're Emhart. And I think the leadership of the company decided, we can't afford this, we're going to look bad. So they decided to actually talk about settlement sincerely. Goodrich was still stalling. They're playing hardball. And they made it very difficult for us. For example, we had a settlement with the county of San Bernardino, whereby the county of San Bernardino is doing the cleanup. But they also agreed to pay the city of Rialto $4 million. The money was paid in an account. It's still sitting there.
Oh, no.
And part of the settlement required us to go to federal court and get the court to bless the settlement as a good faith settlement. And the court did do that. But what did Goodrich do? They appealed the settlement. And so that's still up on appeal because Goodrich's feeling was they're going to make it difficult for everybody, and they did, and they made it more expensive for everybody. That's one of the things they do. By right, that $4 million should have come to the city of Rialto 2 or 3 years ago. We still don't have it. We hope to get it soon because of the settlement, but that held it up.
But wouldn't that release the burden of the city and the residents in that area? Because, water is so pivotal to a lot of us. So ultimately, who ends up paying when that money doesn't come in? The taxpayers.
Well,
right?
Exactly. And I think that was part of Goodrich's strategy. Let's starve the taxpayers in Rialto so they'll stop this litigation by appealing this settlement, because the city would have gotten the $4 million and could have used that money rather than the water rates to keep funding this lawsuit.
Right.
So that was a very frustrating part of it. So Goodrich continued doing that. But meanwhile, what the EPA did is that they got everybody together and they entered into a settlement with Emhart. Part of the settlement was that Emhart would agree to do the initial cleanup. It's called the interim remedy. Mm-hmm. And they agreed to actually start working on it before the settlement was approved. And they've been doing that. They've been doing that very well, to be honest with you. And the settlement was that Emhart would do this. Emhart would put in the first $20 million to do that. After that, EPA would contribute money that it had gotten from the other parties because it had a series of settlements. For example, we settled a case with Pyro Spectacular. I think it was about $6 million. Rialto has received $500,000 from that settlement. Colton has received $500,000 from that settlement. Pardon me. And so that money went into the pot. Other people paid into the pot, but Emhart is leading the charge on the interim remedy. So EPA and the parties were settling, had these settlements. The first one was with PSI. The second one was Emhart. And then lo and behold, EPA announced, we have a tentative settlement with Goodrich. And the case was settled. The settlement agreement has been signed. It's been filed with the court. And they're all waiting hearings because the court has to approve the settlements. One of the good things about the Goodrich settlement is that once that case is approved by the judge, the federal judge, Goodrich and the other parties have to dismiss their appeals so that the city of Rialto can get that $4 million that the county owes it, and the city of Rialto can get another $4 million from Emhart, because out of the Emhart settlement, Rialto was to receive $4 million, but it can't receive it until all the cases are settled and all the appeals are dismissed. I believe that will all happen this year.
Can you possibly clarify what other parties are involved for some of the individuals or listeners out there that may not have heard what parties were actually involved in part of this whole settlement that we have right now? Because that's pivotal for our residents and those that are listening right now to know of some of the parties that were involved in this major issue that has impacted the surrounding cities. Because not only has it been Rialto and Colton and San Bernardino County that have been impacted, but in part of this cleanup, as I stated before, everybody wants to do what we can to make sure that we have good water, good quality of water, and that we clean up so this way our residents then can, be at ease in terms of the quality of water that they're getting at home.
Well, there's a lot of parties. For example, on the first settlement with Pyro Spectacular, which we call PSI, the other parties were Astro Pyrotechnics, Trojan Fireworks Company, Thomas O. Peters Company, Stonehurst LLC, and I think those are the ones that were involved in that settlement. That was the first settlement. In the Emhart settlement or the Black & Decker settlement, to be honest with you, I don't have a list of them, but there's maybe 12, 13 parties that settled that case. In the Goodrich, there's another 9. It's not just Goodrich, it's another 9. And the turning point, I think, on Goodrich came when Goodrich was acquired by another company called United Technologies. And the board, I guess, that runs United Technologies decided, we don't want our subsidiary Goodrich being a bad neighbor. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the dynamics were within the company. But once United Technologies bought Goodrich, we saw the change in behavior in Goodrich, and they started coming to the table. Now, what's interesting is that, as I mentioned, Emhart is leading the charge to do the initial cleanup, and I'll describe that in a minute. Goodrich's responsibility is to fund the final remedy, that is, to do the last part of the cleanup. And I'll try and explain that in a minute. First of all, let me explain that the water in the Rialto Colton basin goes southeast. So picture the Mid-Valley landfill. Mm-hmm. And it goes from that direction over the Rialto airport and over into Colton in the southeast
direction.
Water,
the way it comes from the south
yes.
Down here, and then it gets into the Santa Ana River, and then Santa Ana River then flows right through Riverside County and then right into Orange County. So if we don't stop that perchlorate from getting into that water, then it's going to impact those other cities too as well. And I think the federal government realized this, and I know that when I was involved at the federal level, is that we wanted to make sure that I know with Congressman Ken Calvert was also involved in this because of the city of Riverside, or the county of Riverside, was impacted along with what I was doing during that period of time that I was in there. So that becomes very important. And how will the cleanup contribute to the supply of drinking water now and in the future?
Well, I don't think it'll affect the supply. It'll affect the quality of the supply. The plan for MHART is there's two levels of water. There's I forgot what they're called, but there's one that's higher up and there's one that's deeper, right? Well, the one that's higher up is moving faster. It moves several feet per day. The one that's lower moves maybe a half a foot a day. But it's traveling towards Colton. It actually hasn't reached Colton. And the top plume is just northwest of the Rialto Airport. So the plan is to put a well there south or next to the airport. That's the key area that's been defined. So they're going to put a well there. It's a treatment well. They're going to extract water because the idea is to intercept the flow of water that has perchlorate before it goes any further to the southeast. And then as that water is being pumped, it's kind of like a funnel. They designated the best location so that the wells that are pumping the water will draw into it the water with the perchlorate. It'll come up to the surface. It'll be cleaned, and then it will be provided for drinking water.
Okay.
And that's what so they're going to be there. The estimate is 35 years that they'll be doing that. Goodrich then has a responsibility to clean up what's left, and they're already asking for permission in Rialto to locate wells further south, for example, in the area of Foothill and Sycamore, because that is a continuation. And what they want to do is they want to put a well on a location that's further southeast to make sure they're catching all the water with perchlorate that the MHART wells didn't catch. And so that's the plan. There's a first line of defense and a second line of defense.
Well, that becomes very important as we want to make sure that there is a clean water that is flowing, especially as we see the growth in the population right now. Rialto continues to grow in population and will continue to get a lot larger. Colton will expand in terms of population once we deal with some of the problems we not only have with perchlorate, but the endangered species and some of those areas that will allow some growth in that area. But can you just tell us a little bit about, people really don't understand water, and they don't really understand the value of what water really means to a lot of us. I know you described it earlier when you try to compare it to alcohol in
whiskey.
Your analogy, whiskey.
Oh no!
And people, we take water for granted, and I think it's pivotal that we look at it, and that's why when you look at the Delta, the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, how important that's going to be to make sure that we have water for all of our residents, not only with the Delta supplying for ag and farmers and environment in that area, but that we also have water here in Southern California. I mean, that's, because we're not just talking about now, we're talking about the future too as well, of generations to come. That becomes very important. And that's why with the process that you as a city attorney in the city of Rialto and the surrounding cities such as Colton and San Bernardino County that has come together to say, look, we want to make sure that we have the best quality of water in the area.
If you turn on the faucet and no water comes out, there's going to be a reaction that's not going to be a good one, because water is life-giving. We need water. We need water for everything. We need water to live. We need water to irrigate. And in Rialto and Colton, in fact, in this entire Inland Valley area, the principal source of water is the water in the ground. Other areas don't have groundwater, so they have to import it from the Colorado River, which is already kind of run dry, or the Bay Delta from Northern California. And that has their challenges, too.
That's why they're talking about a plan that the governor would like to implement, not only for ag in the industry in the Central Valley and the Bay Area, but it's also to make sure that Southern California has an abundance of water.
And that's a good plan, and Jerry Brown's doing a great job. But I have to give a plug for my very, very good friend, passed away, Senator Ruben Ayala. I knew him when he was the mayor of Chino, when he was chairman of the Board of Supervisors, when he was a state senator.
And the foresight of what he wanted to do.
Exactly. He was on the State Water Committee, and he came up with the idea, and he pushed very hard for the construction of what's called the peripheral canal to bring water from the Bay Delta, Northern California, down to the south. It was shot down, but Jerry Brown has revived the same concept, except instead of going around the Bay Delta, his proposal is to go under it and to bring the water.
I think that's a good concept, and actually I try to look at it. And another concept that I think would be something that we've got to think in terms of the future, having water that comes from South Dakota, North Dakota, where they have an abundance of water through a pipeline that feeds into the Colorado River, and then it goes right into that would be able to feed Texas, El Paso, that has a dry season, along with New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and Southern California. So this way we're not dependent on water from the northern portion, such as the Delta, but then we would have our own abundance of water. It's something that we need to explore in terms of our future ways of getting waters down here. It becomes very pivotal to a lot of us. I know that we've taken a lot of the time right now, but I appreciate, Jimmy, if you'd like to say any last remarks before we close on the Joe Baca Hour that we have. And again, I want to thank, Danny very much for having this, and 1050 a.m. and KCAA.
The last thing I want to say is the most important thing, and that is hurrah to the residents of the city of Rialto that paid to fund this result.
Definitely.
And hurrah to the leadership on the Rialto City Council.
Yes, definitely.
Paulina, there's an event that's coming up.
Yes, we do have the Joe Baca Foundation Scholarship Awards is coming up on May the 3rd, 2013, and it'll be at Joe Baca Middle School in Bloomington. And I hope everybody could attend. It's a very nice ceremony that he has every year, and I'll be sure I'll be out there.
Yeah, these are scholarships that are given out to many of the kids, and the kids that are actually be receiving the scholarships will be there on that day. So those of you that can attend, want to attend, we need you to attend and help support this, because it is for a worthy cause. It's for a 501c3 nonprofit organization that wants to make sure that kids are able to fulfill their dreams and reach for the stars. And a lot of them, these are the first scholarships that they'll receive, and some of them will be the first ones to go on to a community college, state college, or university. So again, we encourage those of you that will be able to attend. It's the 6th Annual Joe Baca Foundation Scholarship and Reception Award being held at Joe Baca Middle School at 1640 South Lilac in Bloomington, California on May the 3rd. From 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, so those of you that can attend, we'd love to have you there.
Okay, I have one more quick announcement for a job fair by the Veterans of Foreign War Post 8737, Southwestern Vocational College and Seeds of Hope, and that's with James Martinez. It'll be Friday, May 10th, 2013, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the VFW Post on 218 Foothill Boulevard in San Bernardino. They'll have employers there ready to hire people, so I encourage everybody to get involved and be out there.
Okay, again, I want to thank all of you for listening. And next week, we plan on having Manuela Sosa with the Inland Empire Scholarship Foundation. We'll talk about what they're doing in the event that's coming up on May the 11th, along with Colton First, that'll come to talk about their experiences and what they've done that is very positive. Again, I want to thank everyone for listening. And I want to thank Danny Alcarez and Danny Production and 1050 KCAA for having this. And again, congratulations to the Sixers. Keep on winning.
Good night.